Over the years, productivity inside of AutoCAD has really been boosted, and no more so than when Autodesk introduced dynamic blocks some years ago. A dynamic block takes the concept of standardizing a component placement with a block, but really adds to it with some parametric intelligence and some action intelligence to allow one block to perform many different actions. With this very simple example here, I've just really quickly thrown together a representation of the shape of a door. It's very inaccurate, but you'll get the appreciation of what we're about to do. I'm going to follow the usual practice for creating a block. I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to specify my base point and make sure that all of my objects are selected. I want to make sure that I choose Open in Block Editor at the bottom of the screen before pressing OK. This changes my interface in AutoCAD to a grey background and shows me block editing tools both along the top of the screen and in this palette on the left hand side. Simply put, I can do many things. I can make a block simple but add some geometric and dimensional constraints to control the shape and size of that block more specifically. For instance, I could say that I want to have right angle perpendicular constraints between this edge and this edge, and I want to have parallel constraints between this edge and this edge. This allows me to go through and control the way in which the geometry should react to one another. I can also go in and add dimensional constraints, which will essentially add a dimension between 2 points that you select. Those dimensions are linked directly to a parameter, so I could either leave this as D0, dimensional constraint 1, or we can go in and give this a name. So I'm just going to call this thickness. And I'm going to leave it on 50 millimeters for the purpose of this. You'll see that that gives me a grip. So against this dimensional constraint, I have properties. I can look at those like any other AutoCAD property, and we can see that we've got a load of information such as how many grips do we want to show against this. I don't want this to be stretchable, so I want this to say 0 grips. So there we go. But I do want to place down a block table next to that particular dimension. And against that block table, I want to add in parameters for thickness and control that I've got the ability to have a 50 millimeter door, a 40 millimeter door, a 30 millimeter door, and a 20 millimeter door. Again, for the purpose of this, I'm not being accurate with regards to my dimensions. I'm just showing you how you could go about this process. This places a little grip here which we can use. If we go to Test Block and select the block, we have a little drop down here whereby I can change between the different configurations of size that I've just set up within the model. And the model will update accordingly. Really useful stuff, especially if you scale that across the entire block. Let's close the test block and also look at adding a parameter. A parameter is going to be there to perform an action. For example, I want this to be able to scale up and down specific to the type of door opening it's going to go into. So let's add a linear parameter and let's go between the bottommost left and right points of this door. Much like with the dimensional constraint, this will add 2 grips. I'm going to go to Actions and I'm going to choose a Scale action. I want to choose this parameter and I want to be able to scale all of my objects. You can, if you want to, select this distance and go to its properties, just like we did with the dimensional constraint up here, and we can change the different value sets down the bottom. I can choose to be a list, much like what I've done with the block table, or even an increment. I could say that this starts at 815, and maybe it goes up in increments, it goes up in increments of 100. It starts at 815, and it goes up to 1215. Again, if I go and test my block, select this now, I've got a grip down here, which I have different lines. You can see as I go through those lines, the block is scaling up and down. If I then use the block table at the top left, I can change the thickness of the door and then rescale that particular component. If I close this test block and close the block editor, I can save that block and that information will be stored inside of AutoCAD. So if I go and place this block several times within my drawing, for example, around different locations. I can select each one and change the configuration. And I have one block which is allowing me to go in and control exactly what I'm doing and how that block is being controlled and worked with at any specific point in time. Dynamic blocks aren't just limited to that functionality. The amount of functionality that you have is quite dramatic actually. So you can go in and have flip actions, you can have pattern actions, you can start working with visibility states to have maybe a section, a plan, an elevation, all saved under one block. So if we go in, we can really make our block start working for us and be as productive as possible inside of AutoCAD.